Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's session. You might notice if you're someone's with a stickler to details, it is now 5 ways to create better shopper insights instead of 4. I couldn't choose because there's so many ways to create better shopper insights, so I changed it to 5. So that's what we're going to be talking about in today's session, which is number 6 of 6 of the virtual training session series that we've been running over the last 2 weeks. So welcome to today's session. I am Sue Nicholls. I am the president and owner of a company called CMKG, which is a training company. We primarily teach to retailers and suppliers in areas like presentation skills, data and insights, shopper insights, everything to do with category management. And so we've put together this series to give you the opportunity to really experience some virtual training for yourself. Some of you guys have been here along the whole path with us with all 6 sessions or a few of them, or this might be your first one. But the opportunity is to, first of all, understand the opportunities for virtual training. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on. Also learn new stuff. It's always great to be learning. We really try in our training to push you into thinking about things from new and meaningful ways to help you stay relevant in your job, to land that next job, to help teams and organizations get alignment on different topic areas. At the end of the session, you'll also get access to a micro-learning tool if you are in the Zoom meeting. So let's, one last thing, we are in a virtual meeting and I'm doing this for specifically for a reason. That's because for those of you who are on Zoom, this is kind of the interface where we get together and do the virtual training. And one of the really important things in virtual training is to turn on your camera. I know that this is a public session, so you might not be comfortable with that, but happy to see Fred and Ed. You got your cameras on, we're good to go. So please stay muted and please participate if you want to type thoughts into the chat box or questions or anything like that. Because we only have 20 minutes, I'm really limiting the actual interactivity just because I'd like to get you guys to walk away with some, wow, I've learned quite a few things in 20 minutes. So there's no better time than now for transformation. We need to understand our shoppers. And I really challenge you to think about refreshing and maintaining your connection to the new and changing shopper. And I mean that not just from your desk, but from total team and organizational perspective. The shopper, we need to understand who they are, how their shopper behaviors have changed, how we need to track them moving forward. The connection to this rapidly changing consumer and shopper are paramount for organizations. It should not just be a team in a silo who understands. It shouldn't be a team who's only looking at shopper from your brand perspective, but looking at a more holistic perspective, especially if you're calling on retail customers. And then you need to share and disseminate that information across your organization so everybody is able to talk about the shopper, maybe not at the same level of depth, but that they can understand it, they can talk about trends and the changing shopper and who they are, and then they can incorporate that into the discussions that they have both internally and externally to make better decisions and recommendations based on that shopper. So today I put together, like I said, 5 ways, not 4, to create better shopper insights. And I'm going to go through them in enough detail that hopefully you'll go away with a few ideas for yourself on ways that you can improve your approach. So first one is understanding key drivers and mega trends that drive shopper change. It's important to realize that category trends are not driven by that last promotion or those new SKUs that were brought into the category. So many times I see presentations where sales teams or marketing teams make it seem like a trend was driven by the category shoppers, by innovation, and even by tactics like promotions and new SKUs and display activity, instead of them being the result of something much bigger that you and I don't influence. It's the result of global drivers and mega trends. And organizations, teams, and individuals need to understand, track, and constantly update the mega trends and the implications that they have on your categories and your brands, and what are really driving that shopper behavior in our industry and in our categories, and what we anticipate to see in the future. Like if I look at an example like, plant-based protein, which is it's a really big one these days. That is not something that's being driven in specific categories like meatless proteins and those kind of things. It's a much bigger global trend for environmental and sustainability reasons and for health and wellness. And so those are kind of the mega trends that are driving it. It's not you because you came up with some new SKUs in a category. So we are responding, or should be responding, as brands and within new categories even of these mega trends. And so it's so important for people to understand that bigger picture perspective. And sometimes it's just the context that we talk about these things in. Bringing things up to a bigger level sometimes really helps solidify understanding for people. So what do I mean by drivers and mega trends? Euromonitor has an amazing analysis framework. When you receive the notes from this, you'll be able to grab that URL. Even though it's from 2019, it's a very valuable white paper. And basically, their framework allows you to understand the biggest influences on consumer behavior and better predict the future for the industry and categories. And when you look at their framework, you can see that category trends are actually like way down here. So that's what I mean, that we are not driving trends within our categories. It's happening at a much bigger level that we all need to better understand. And then the white paper goes on to talk about the key drivers that set the stage of a changing environment and enable change. So things like shifting economic powers, technology is a massive one, environmental shifts, world population, and changing values. And so these are identified, and you can find different companies with slightly different drivers, but you kind of get the point here. These are the biggest things that are driving change across the globe. And then within that, then there's mega trends identified, things like a circular economy, connected consumers, generation gaps, healthy living, those kind of things. And this is where some of them may affect different categories differently, and ways shoppers are shopping differently, and even at a generational level, or different customer segments that are an important part of your business. And so you really need to understand which of these mega trends are most driving some of those most important shoppers for you, and make sure that you're addressing those needs in everything that you're doing from a bigger picture perspective within your organization. So these mega trends you can see are number 2 on the list over on the left, and then it gets into broad megatrend behavior and understandable themes within each of those megatrends. Then that affects industry trends and how consumers are shopping in retail and moving to the online space and those kind of things. And then it plays out into category trends. So there's quite a few different things that need to be considered and understood. And so you can also Google search this white paper. It's one that is definitely worth reading and downloading and really sharing within your organization if you're not thinking about things from this bigger picture perspective. Okay, second way to create better shopper insights is to understand how shopper traffic and spend have changed both online and offline compared to other categories. So rather than jumping right in and starting to talk about your category, looking at things from a bigger picture perspective is incredibly helpful, and understanding what's happening in the total market or within the total stores. So Shopper Intelligence, who is a company who provides shopper research through survey-based approach, has shared some great data with me to help understand how and what is changing for retailers. In grocery as an example, I had to pick one example. And so they shared with me the top traffic and spend categories pre-pandemic. And so you can see over on the left-hand side, fresh vegetables, fresh fruit, and fresh meat. They're always the top 3 since they've started this survey for years. They're 100% identified with a store and retailer brand and are almost always the top 1 to 3 listed in the main reason I go shopping. And then pre-pandemic, the top spend categories, which are where questions related to encouraging shoppers like to spend more in the store. So what areas do they go and spend more in the store? These spend categories are a mix of impulse driven, indulgence, minimally price sensitive categories that are really affected by, you know, I want to I'm going to trying to get them to spend more when they're in the stores. So these pre-pandemic numbers here with the traffic and the spend categories have been very stable in the Shopper Intelligence database for over 2 years prior to the pandemic. So then, shebang, the pandemic hits. Do you think these changed? Absolutely. The ones that are highlighted in left in blue are all new as top 10, and the ones on the right, as it relates to spend, are new as it relates to top 10. And this, remember, this is grocery. And so when you're seeing things like cosmetics, nails, and those, it's like, wow, that's a pretty interesting category to see showing in top 10 spend categories. But you think about it, and some of these numbers really make sense, like coffee, the traffic increase. Well, why is that? Because we all stopped going to Starbucks, or in Canada, Tim Hortons, or wherever you buy your coffee, driving to work. Fred is obviously a big coffee drinker. And so, you know, I know my coffee, we actually ended up buying an espresso machine because we like really good coffee. And so now we are not going to be going to Starbucks as much as we used to because we're loving it and it's a lot cheaper. So plug for Nespresso. Then you got dog food and treats. No, there's been such a high adoption rate and people bringing in dogs and cats and all kinds of stuff because they've been at home. And so that makes sense that that area is going to go up as well. And then we've got alcohol. And for many of us, that's been a little bit of a one where we might be, nipping into the bottle a little bit more than we used to. And it might be a bigger reason to go into the stores because, where you used to buy it might not be available anymore. And so you really need to think about and understand some of these numbers. And, when I talk about nails, well, nails, I know I was going to the nail salon every couple of months and then pandemic hit and they were shut down for a very long time. And so if I wanted to do my own nails, I had to go buy it. And once again, people were doing less shopping in less types of outlets. And so grocery, because they had to go in to buy their groceries anyways, that was a place where they went to buy other products that weren't necessarily ones that they were going to spend. So are those going to shift back? I can assume that yes, some of them will, but some of them won't. And so it's really important, is like if you see your categories in here, or even if you start to understand the traffic and spend on your categories that you're responsible for, how does it play out? And how much of it is realistic that these changed numbers that have shifted are going to stay? And how many are going to shift back? And that's kind of where the question is right now. We don't really know. And so that's why it's so important to track your results in 2021 as shoppers find a new normal, because we're really in a point of uncertainty right now. We can't assume it's going to go back to the first slide that I showed you with the numbers from pre-pandemic, but they're not going to stay the same as they have been, because some of the, I'm going to start going to the nail salon, but I might have found a nice product and realized, wow, I'm pretty good at doing my own nails, like that kind of thing. And so that's why we really want to make sure that we understand and track these trends going forward from a bigger picture perspective than just our categories, because this is a very helpful way to understand relative to the total store. Next thing is drilling into shopper insights and making sure that you're understanding what's happened in your shopper behavior. And you need to dig deep. If you don't know, if you don't understand panel data is one of my biggest and favorite data sources, and it always has been, and it just seems to get juicier and juicier all the time. And so this is one that everybody needs to understand, not just category management and shopper insights, but your salespeople need to be very proficient in understanding panel data, as do your marketing people, so that they're looking at things, because sometimes they're only looking at things from a consumer and brand perspective and getting their information from their own market research. But by everybody looking at the same page in the panel data and understanding it also from a retailer perspective, you can get a lot better insights. So Numerator is a provider of, is one of the biggest and growing panel data companies out there, and they pulled some great data for me to look at pasta. Like because I like looking at examples from categories. So these numbers were pulled from March 1st, 2020 to February 28th, 2021. So these numbers are really new, and we can see that pasta experienced incredibly strong numbers over the course of the pandemic across all of the channels. And if you're familiar with some of these categories that are very highly developed, pasta doesn't see growth like 2.2 penetration points. That is a lot of new households buying. Their buying rates up 19.8%. And you can see all of these incredibly green numbers. And so, you know, those pasta companies were probably high-fiving, even although a lot of them, the other thing that happened is because during the pandemic, it was one of those categories that we all went to buy in the grocery store and there was nothing left. Sometimes they were completely wiped off the shelf. And so you were either forced to buy another brand or another type and those kind of things. And so there was also the risk of like trying new brands and actually finding new brands that you might like better or find better value in or whatever. So what do you do with this information? It's not enough for you to make any decisions or recommendations on. And in fact, it brings up more questions than answers. So sometimes when I see presentations and they show these kind of numbers and then it's like, yay, we're up, you know, that is not enough information. This is total pasta. And it's also the same if you're just showing it for your total brand. It's not helpful. And so you really need to be digging in deeper to look at deeper product, geography, and time periods. And also you want to be tracking these numbers from a category level as well as from your brand perspective to see how they're shifting. Because if you think these numbers are going to stay, they're not. We have more people going out into restaurants. That in itself is going to significantly impact food categories and what's being sold in grocery. And we don't know to what degree. Perhaps some people are going to be spending less in restaurants. Once again, it's this area we don't know. And that's why as this whole year plays out, we really need to stay in touch with what's going on there. Next, looking at trended shopper information. So not only should we be looking at our data from past 12 and 24 and 52 weeks, but we should be looking at it trended. So once again, I'm looking at pasta and noodles. And here is the household penetration that's happened over the last 2 years. And so if I put a linear trend line in there, it's going up. But if you know much about math, then this little hump right here, that was right in the heart of the beginning of the pandemic when there was pantry loading and panic. And so if we took that hump out, you can see that in fact, it's not really trending up the way that it is. And those numbers that I was showing that were in green is a lot driven by that hump. So as we kind of evolve over this year, if we're staying down in this area, you know that things are not going to stay the same as they have been. And realistically, it's going to be a difficult thing to do. And then we can also tie in buying rate to understand that as well. And so perhaps the buying rate, you have to think about buying rate. Last year, there were no promotions. Everything was being sold at regular price. And if pasta is a category, which I know they are, that sells quite a bit on promotion, that number too is inflated because this year we're getting back into promotions again. So think about these numbers and be realistic with kind of where you see things going in the future, because it's really important that we're keeping an eye on this and not just hoping to heck that things don't, like, if I look from January to February 2021, and we don't want to see that number starting to go down and down. And so that's why you need to drill into these numbers once again by product group and geography and really understand what's driving those numbers. And finally, you need to know who your shopper is. When I work with teams, I ask a lot, who is your target shopper? Or who is your shopper? And a lot of times they don't really know. That's kind of scary. And in a lot of times it's very vague or general shopper descriptions instead of really having an innate sense of who it is that you really are trying to target. And this is both for retailers and for suppliers. For some reason, we just want to be the, we want to please the whole world. And we can't do that unless we split them into our proper customer segments, get to know them much more intimately, and then figure out how to market to them, what the right SKUs are, where they play in the world, where they are on the internet, where they buy from, all of those kind of things. And so sometimes it ends up being that we focus primarily on the most important and heavy shoppers. So we can understand in panel data who our heaviest shoppers are. So this is once again from pasta and noodles. Down the left-hand side, we have it broken out by high, medium, and low. And so high relates to heavy buyers. And then you can also see that we have year ago. Year ago is always really important to look at because you don't want to just look at it from now. You want to understand where the shifts are, and also as you move forward, because this data is available monthly now. It used to be that panel data was available quarterly, and some companies were only getting it once a year. So if you can get monthly panel data, you need to be once again looking at these changes and shifts. Because when you look at this across the top, you can see we've got household penetration, purchase frequency, buying rate, spend per trip, and units per trip. And these are all very important numbers in panel data. But what are the two most important ones? Any guesses? You want to type them in the chat box if you have any idea of what two are the most important purchase behavior measures in panel data. I will tell you the answer. No one is typing in an answer. The answer is the household penetration and the buying rate. And why is that? That is because household penetration times buying rate equals sales. So when you're looking at your sales numbers and you're trying to understand why are our numbers up or down, rather than just diving in and looking at your tactics and saying, oh, it's because we weren't promoting last year or whatever, also dig into your panel data and start utilizing this, because it can be the huge indicators that tie in with shopper of why your business is up or down. And I am such an advocate of making sure that you have in your scorecards some measures from the panel data to incorporate to, because you really need to get people thinking about that household penetration, or the number of households buying times the buying rate, or how much they're spending, equals sales. And so this is such a simple formula for you to start looking at your business from a very different and very shopper focused perspective, because then I can understand my high, medium, low buyers and how they're shifting from year ago, which is a really important piece. I can see in this example, like for our high or heavy buyers, that we're up in penetration, frequency, buying rate, and spend per trip, and units per trip are the same when I compare it to those lower down rows. And the most important numbers for me to really think about are the household penetration and the buying rate. And when I look at it from a different perspective, 28.6% of the pasta buyers spend 68.9% of total category dollars on pasta. So what does that tell me? I want to drill in and get to know, dig into those heavy buyers more. And so you want to once again drill down by product, time, and geography levels to understand if you have specific brands in here, or I prefer to look across segments as well, like pasta types and those kind of things. Then you can go in to understand where are the heavy buyers, and how do we compare, and who's going up or down and growing, and keeping an eye on that as well. So these are all very different perspectives that you need to have somebody keeping their eye on from a big picture perspective, and also kind of how does that filter down into different retailers and different segments and brands and everything. And this is going to be key. I swear this is going to be the success of companies moving forward, is thinking about things from this perspective. Then we can go into demographic data to even get more juiciness out of the data. Demographic data is very important to look at properly from different perspectives. So when I see the whole list, if you've seen demographic data and there's like income level, age group, number of household members, and it goes on and on, city, urban versus rural, and ethnicity, and on, and are we rich or poor, all this kind of stuff. And it's overwhelming. And then you see a chart that shows all of it with some, oh, you're over here and under here. It's not helpful. So one of the ones that I really like looking at is generations, because there are some commonalities between generations that you can at least start to better understand. So in this example, once again for pasta, we have the percentage of pasta shoppers across the different generations. So 4.5% of all pasta is households are Gen Z, and so on. And so these are really important numbers to show. Sometimes we only see indices. Not a good thing, because what if you're looking at the indices, but you don't realize that boomers are actually the biggest percentage of households. So really want to make sure that if you are receiving this data, that you're pushing for this, because I see so many times when it doesn't have the percentage of households, and you've got to be looking at things from a better perspective than that. Then we've got an index versus all pasta shoppers. And so this compares where your high, medium, and low buyers are. And then the other piece that's not in here that you should have is an index versus dollars, because my boomers might be 35.8% of households, but they're going to spend less dollars because they typically only have one or two people in the household. And so you want to make sure that you're looking at it from all three perspectives. And then that you also have your year ago numbers to compare that to right now. It's interesting, when I asked Numerator for this data, they said, you're probably not going to see any big shifts in the demographics. If you look at some of these indices, there's significant changes in the demographics. And so, we're going to note things like Gen X and boomers are the biggest pasta shopper segments. So we want to understand them better. Millennials are growing in percentage of households. There's more heavy buyers in Gen X. They went from a 109 to a 117 index. And so those are the kind of things that we want to pull out, and then even potentially dive into those three segments in more detail to even look at them at a deeper level. Once again, this is all pasta. You can go into brands and segments depending on what your category is and how you receive your data. So make sure you compare percentage of households to dollars. You want to see if the demographics have shifted since the pandemic. This is honestly the first time that I've been looking at demographic data since it was invented. I'm really old. And you almost never see changes, or it's so teeny that it's not even noteworthy unless it's a brand new category or something like that, or there's something really evolving in there. And then you want to drill into geography and product for deeper insights as well. So that's it. I'm sorry, I never get to 20 minutes. I can't stop talking. I get so excited about this stuff. But I hope that these are helpful for you to really think about ways to change your view on Chopper Insights, and realize that this is a priority. This should be a huge priority for organizations to go through a deep dive. Sometimes we're all so siloed in our teams and our specific categories, and that we're not drilling into this kind of stuff. And if we are, perhaps we're not sharing it appropriately and broadly as we learn some of these new insights. Before I kind of wrap things up, I do just want to take a minute to talk about the opportunity for you to invest in virtual training, since this is the last session of 6. One of my favorite things is to facilitate virtual training sessions. We are offering a special of 50% off your first virtual training. So it can start as low as $1,000 for an hour session. It can be a one-off topic. We also do a lot of series for companies based on different topics that they have. We include training in Catman Foundations, strategic thinking about some of these numbers. Some of you have gone through all 6 of these sessions. That kind of gives you a flavor for some of the variants of the different topics we do. Probably my most popular one that we do is in presentation skills, everything from PowerPoint to data viz to storytelling and storyboarding. And so if you're interested, when you get the resource from this, you can go and take a look at our website, or I also have my link and my email address too. You can even go book a meeting with me when you get the email. So hopefully I've incented some of you to think about ways that we could possibly do more virtual training for your team to really customize it so it's not so general. We can use your data. We don't have to use PASTA data, those kind of things. So I hope you found this session and the whole series helpful. And once again, we're going to send you an email with a resource book link and a link to the webinar recording. Remember that we also offer the instructor-led virtual training, and it is a really cost-effective way and a quick way. You're not pulling people out for days on end to do the training sessions. And I think it's going to be something that sticks around for a long time. And finally, I would love it if you made a recommendation or gave a shout out to CMKG to a boss and LinkedIn, to someone in your learning and training team. If you enjoyed the training, maybe forward them this last, the link to the last resource. And that's all I have for you. So I hope you enjoyed the session. And I thank you for continuing to learn. It's such an important thing for us to all be doing. So if you have any questions, I would love to, I'll stick around for a few minutes, and otherwise happy learning, and I hope to see you soon. Take care.